All right, I'm going to review with you how to convert fractions, decimals, and percents. So for the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these boxes, we're going to be converting the fractions into a decimal and to a percent. So we already really know how to make fractions into decimals, but now it's just making that fraction to decimal to be able to make it into a percent. Okay, so if you already have a place value in the denominator, you can just go ahead and write that number, this number in the correct place value. So for example, there's no holes, point, and this first place value is the tenths. So that 3 goes in the tenths. Okay, now it's a decimal. Now we can convert that decimal into a percent. Okay, and a percent, as a reminder, is a ratio that compares a number to 100, always. Okay, so to change this decimal to a percent, we are going to multiply the number by 100. So because we're comparing it to 100, but all that does is it moves the decimal 2 places to the right. 1, 2. And since there's nothing there, we add a 0. So it's 30%. Okay, on this one, we don't have a place value in the denominator, but we can get it to a place value that we know, 100. So 50 times 2 makes 100, and 33 times 2 is 66. And we can write 66 hundredths as 0.66. Now, see how this is a ratio, it's a comparison of two things, and it's something compared to, sorry that it keeps auto-focusing, there we go. It's compared to 100. So since you're comparing a number to 100, this is your percent, 66%. Now, if we do it with the decimal to percent, if we move this 2 times to the right, it still would be rewritten as 66%. All right, let's do 2 out of 25. So we're going to get that number compared to 100, so it is a percent. So 25 times 4 makes 100, 2 times 4 is 8. So be careful on this one, 8 hundredths, we got to put this in the hundredths place value. So there's nothing in the tenths, and that's 8. So the number that's being compared to 100 is 8, so that's our percent. And if we also move the decimal 2 places to the right, 1, 2, that turns into 8% as well. All right, this is one of our funky ones, 3/8. So if you remember that 1/8 is 0.125, we can multiply that times 3 because we have 3 of them. We'll do that real quick. And that's 0.375. So this is the decimal. So now to change that to a percent, we move the decimal 2 places to the right. 1, 2. And the decimal ends up between the 7 and the 5, so it's 37.5%. Okay, in the second section, we're going to be converting decimals to fractions and to percents. Excuse me. So let's go ahead and read this 0.06, or you actually read this as 0 and 6 hundredths. Where the number is determines the denominator of your fraction. So our denominator is 100. The number behind the decimal is 6. Okay, now it's a fraction. We go ahead and simplify it. Divide it by 2. And we get 3 out of 50. There's our simplified fraction. Now the percent is the number that's compared to 100. So what number is being compared to 100? 6. So the percent is 6%. We could also just move the decimal, 0.06, 2 places to the right. 1, 2, it ends up here. All right, let's look at this one. This time the 6 is in the tenths place. So the denominator is 10. Numerator is the number behind the decimal. And we know if we multiply 10 times 10, it makes 100, so 6 times 10 is 60. So percent this time is 60%. We could also have just moved the decimal 2 places to the right, but be careful because we got to add a 0 on that one. All right, let's look at 0 and 45 hundredths. Denominator this time is 100 because the last number is in the hundredths place. Now this number is being compared to 100, so that's going to be our percent, 45%. Okay, but we can go ahead and simplify this one just so we have our simplified version. So our fraction is 9 out of 20. Our percent is 45%. We could have also just moved the decimal 2 places to the right to get 45%. Oh, and I forgot to simplify this 6/10. Sorry about that, guys, back there. Simplified 6/10 is 3/5. All right, let's look at 1 and 2/10. This one is a whole number, and it's a mixed number because it has a whole number and a decimal. So we're going to have to write 1 whole, and then this one will be our fraction, 2 out of 10. Okay, now if we want to go ahead and just simplify that already, that's going to be 1 and 1/5 because I divided this by 2. So right now this is our mixed number simplified, but let's write it as an improper fraction. So 5 times 1 is 1. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 1 is 6. So this is our improper fraction. And we can turn that one into something compared to 100 to make the percent. So 5 times 20 makes 100. 6 times 20 is 120. So this is the number that's being compared to 100. So it's 120%. If we ended up doing the decimal moving 2 places to the right, we still get that 120%. Now, the way that you know something is more than 100% is if it is more than the value of 1. So 1 whole represents 100%. So if I have more than a whole, I have more than 100%. Okay, now we have to be careful on ones that are like this. I'm going to go ahead and first I'm going to do the decimal moving to show the percent, then I'll write it as a fraction. So when we have more than 2 numbers behind the decimal, it gets a little confusing for the percent. It's kind of like the one up here where we did 37.5. We move it 2 times to the right, 1, 2. So there is going to be a fractional piece in our percent. So it's 22.2%. And the way that you can remember how many times to move it is 100 has 2 zeros. So you move it 2 times. Okay, now let's write this as our fraction. This is the last number's in the thousandths place. So our denominator on this one's going to be 1,000. And we're going to go ahead and divide by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 2 divided by 2, 1. And then 1,000 divided by 2 is 500. And I will double check to make sure that we can't divide anything else out for that one. And I don't think any other number is divisible for that one because I think, yeah, that's not going to be divisible. So this is our simplified fraction. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and do percents to fractions and decimals. Okay, so when we're changing a percent to a decimal, last time we were doing decimal to percent, we moved to the right. Now when we do percent to a decimal, we move to the left. And we move 2 times. 1, 2. So that's 0.48. And now we can write this as a fraction because we know place value. The last number is in the hundredths place, so it'll be 48 out of 100. And then we can just divide. We can divide by 4 on this one. And it turns into 12 out of 25. Okay, so let's do another one. The decimal is, if it's not given, then it's always behind the last number. So 2 times to the right, 1, 2, 0.90. Our last number is in the hundredths place, so 90 out of 100. Now we simplify, divide by 10, divide by 10, and we get 9 out of 10. Okay, 5%. 2 times to the right, 1, 2. Be careful on this one since there's nothing there. Add a 0. 0.05. Last number is in the hundredths place, so the denominator is 100. Simplify, divide by 5. 1 out of 20. Ooh, 140%. Okay, this one is larger than 100%, so it's going to be bigger than 1. So when I move it 2 times, 1, 2, this 1 ends up being in the this 1 ends up in the ones place. So it's 1.40. Okay? So we have 1 whole and 40 hundredths. So we can simplify our fraction by dividing by, we could divide by 20. And we'll get 2/5 for the fraction. That's 1 and 2/5. We could change that into an improper fraction to show it as just a fraction. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 2 is 7. So this the improper fraction would look like this. Okay, now we're going to work with a lot of percents that are not whole this year. Lots of times when we're going to be doing that, so we have to be very careful. We're going to have to be able to turn it into a decimal. So 7.5, we move it 2 times to the left. 1, 2. Then a 0 comes here. So the decimal is 0.075. Okay, now if I'm going to write that as a fraction, the last number is in the thousandths place. So it's 75 over 1,000. Now I know I can divide by 25. And 75 divided by 25, think about it in quarters. It's 3/4 divided by 25, so it's 3/4 in there. And then 1,000 divided by 25 is 40. Okay? We can't simplify anymore, so that's our fraction. All right, and so that's converting fractions, decimals, and percents. Review from last year.